Benjamin Castle are Americans. Watching the footy.
Liam Ryan saying, kick it my way, I want to jump over the pack, and here he comes! Ryan!
This is Buddy Franklin! This is the greatest showman!
Got the handball off to Myers. Myers looking for the lead of Stengel. Gee, they're good. Gee, they're sharp. Razzle dazzle Rioli.
Oh, who else? McDonald!
From inside the centre square. Boys kick the goal. Boys kick the goal. From inside the centre. I can't believe that.
Good time of day, everyone. This is episode 166 of Americans Watching the Footy. I'm your host, Ethan Castle.
I'm your co-host, Benjamin Castle. You can probably hear Brian Harambe shadowboxing and trying to pry open the door to Ethan's closet in the background.
You don't need a lot of creativity to come up with a theme for this round. You know, sometimes on the college football podcast, the Solid Verbal, like they really have to reach to think of like a theme. You know, they're trying to come up with something alliterative, like, you know, it could be Shoebox Saturday. It's always something that starts with an S, Saturday. Well, this round is Rivalry Round.
Where's my ruck round? Where's my ruck round? Where's my ruck round?
You already had a ruck round last year.
Unlike, you know, if the NHL had to invent, you know, third line left wingers day or something, we have our theme. But I am going to introduce a little something new to go with this round. So if you listen to our round 7 recap,
Cracking episode.
yeah, every game was cracking. So unlike the round 7 preview, where we tried to rank every game, in fact, we're kind of going to do it, but it's not really going to be the main goal here. The goal is to figure out which games are the most cracking.
I thought our main goal was to blow up and then act like we don't know nobody.
So we're going to rank each game on a scale of 1 to 5, or I guess 0 to 5, on how cracking they are. But I do want you real quick to, you know, write down, like, rank your games 1 through 9 on how cracking. If I'm going to do the same.
Cracking footy, Gromit. I actually don't know what the bottom... yeah, I do know what the bottom is going to be. Second from the bottom, though. That's another story.
We're going to rate each of these out of 5 what, though? What, Ritzes? Triscuits? We need a type of cracker that we can assess this.
Saltines. We're not original.
All right, we're doing it out of saltines, then.
I mean, I feel like salt's a very appropriate thing to have going on as well. This is a very tough round to rank because I only see one game with that easily gets down to the bottom.
I mean, even that one in like a sicko sort of way could be kind of cracking.
I feel like cracking has to have natural non-sickos intrigue, though. Some of these are going to be really tough to separate here. I have like some clear tiers, but I have a tough job kind of separating them between.
Yeah, I've got a couple of tiers as well. That's why I think instead of just trying to order them, we're going to go off of how cracking they are. Starting with Showdown 55.
The ledger in the rivalry is tied at 27 apiece. This will be the Crows home showdown at 7 p.m. local time, 7:30 p.m. for Eastern Australian audiences. Americans can find this game on Fox Sports 2, 5:30 a.m. Eastern, 2:30 Pacific.
This is definitely up there in terms of like one of the games I'm really going to try to get people to watch because it's a great rivalry. And I think Americans, even if they don't understand the sport, will appreciate just some of the crowd shots. Even though I think for Port's home showdown, it's a little better, it's still going to be great.
That'll be in round 23, by the way.
That'll also be cracking.
I think it might be even more cracking.
No disrespect to Crows fans. I think Crows fans are great. But I think in terms of you just like watching people really lose their shit after a bad call and stuff, you get it way better with Port. Also, I do want to say, like, no, there's obviously no Never Tear Us Apart. But have you noticed they've had a pretty cool little light show before the opening bounce at Crows games? They've been playing like this sort of medieval-ish remix of Warriors by Imagine Dragons, which has been used in a billion teams, like intro videos, including the Ravens, and it works. You know, it's not quite like the sing-along aspect, but it's cool.
Geez, that song is a decade old.
What? I would have guessed it was like, I don't know, 2016?
September 18th, 2014, almost a decade old. It was used by Riot Games for a video promoting the League 2014 World Championship.
Yes, that's like what the remix.
Yeah, I knew that part.
Yep. So it is time, as we are recording this after the lineups have come out for this game, to play Mad Libs.
Libs are not that mad.
Except this time, I decided we're going to do like some actual Mad Libs before we get on with the list part. So I need a verb in past tense.
Past tense is a good note there. Foisted.
I need an adjective.
Redurple.
Was that a Simpsons thing too?
I'm just thinking of the microwave guys.
You're right.
I was tempted to use cracking, but it wouldn't fit too well.
I need a body part.
Gallbladder.
I need another adjective.
Ballot.
I need another body part.
In honor of Weird Al, pancreas. Yeah, I'm going for organs rather than outer body.
Here it works. I need a city.
Yaren.
Oh, okay.
Phosphate mining created something, I guess.
And I need a verb.
Tense.
Present.
Thrust.
Okay. Now I guess the next thing to do is for you to guess the actual changes for each team, and then we'll play the actual Mad Libs version. So let's start. I mean, there are a couple things you should already know.
Yes. Pick number 8, Dan Curtin, is making his debut, 31, and led the Crows with 31 disposals as well as 7 marks and a goal.
There was talk for a lot of the year last year that he could have been like a top 2 pick, maybe even number 1, and he ended up slipping down to 8.
And the Crows made a trade with the Giants to secure his services. Giants were comfortable, I guess, that Connor O'Sullivan's best friend, Phoenix Gothard, would still be available on pick 12.
I think considering he was basically off the board.
Yeah, that still surprises me.
But considering their ability to identify talent, I don't question the Giants. So we know that he's in.
We also know that Luke Pedler is out and that it may be a season-ending shoulder injury.
He had been playing very poorly, but it's unfortunate for this to happen right after he got back.
And had a decent start to that game, too.
To be fair, it was North.
At the same time, could have been a real bounce-back game for just get in better form in general. Couple other injury concerns. Are Jordan Butts and Brody Smith both back? Neither of them were on the injury report.
Yes,
They're both back.
both are in. So you've got 3 confirmed ins.
Are those all the changes for the Crows?
Have the Crows have any other ins?
I don't think so.
Correct. They have 3 ins.
Okay, the other outs, with Butts coming back in, I'm expecting that James Borlace is one to make way.
Correct. And who's the other?
That's honestly disappointing for, imagine the storyline is just if Borlace, the son of a Sandful Premiership Port captain, were to do something massive for the Crows at a showdown. The other one with Smith coming in, let's see how like for like you go. I would hope that Ned McHenry stays. Is McHenry the out? I hope not.
He is not.
In that case, then Will Hamill's been quiet the past couple weeks.
Correct.
Wow, that was quick.
All right, Port Adelaide. How many changes and who are they?
Connor Rosie said himself that he was in. Is he in? Yes. Guess that wasn't that big a deal with the hamstring then. Well, we know that O'Lear is concussed, as he was in the previous showdown, ... Yeah, that was the most recent showdown there.
I didn't even realize, but last year's showdowns were memorable, and I think it can get overlooked because of Jordan Dawson. We'll get to that in a sec. Let's just finish this, though. So we know O'Lear is out.
We also know that Sam Powell-Pepper did his ACL.
Do they have any other outs?
Unless Yvonne Soldo's fit to play, which I don't think he is.
I think he's going to be out at least a month.
Yeah, right. In that case, I think it's just the 2.
And who's in?
I would personally take Ryan Burton over Tom Clury. So I would hope that Ken Hinckley does the same.
He did.
Okay. And then to replace Sam Powell-Pepper, we both love Frank Evans, and he was a rare bright spot for Port in that second showdown last year and later on of the season. I hope it's Frank, but I don't think it is. Is it Frank? No. Damn it. Then in that case, the only thing that would make sense, though, would be Jed McEntee. It is.
All right. So with that,
The actual Mad Lib.
Port Adelaide has foisted Jeremy Finlayson for Thursday night showdown against Adelaide.
Oh yeah, wait, Finlayson's eligible again after serving his homophobia suspension.
While the Crows have boosted its defense for the Redurple clash at Adelaide Oval. Jordan Butts and Brody Smith have been recalled by the Crows alongside debutant Daniel Curtin, the number 8 pick in the 2023 draft, whose first AFL game was confirmed on Tuesday. Will Hamill and James Borlace have been dropped while Luke Pedler is out with a shoulder injury. The Powers made just 2 forced changes, with Alir concussion and Sam Powell-Pepper gallbladder both out. Ryan Burton and Jed McEntee have come in to thrust them, while skipper Connor Rosie has been named despite suffering a pancreas injury last Friday night. But Ford has found no room for Finlayson, who is available again after serving a 3-match ban for making a phallic slur towards a Yaren player in round 4.
Okay, actually, kind of fitting.
The 28-year-old played the first 4 games of the year and before his ban had not missed a match since round 2 last season. I realized there were kind of a couple more paragraphs there that we could have done something with, but this was good. That was productive. Okay. So last year, Crows swept 2 memorable things from the meetings last year. When the Crows won in round 3, Riley Philthorpe kicked 5 goals and gave Lockie Jones the "you did that."
That was after his 4th, and Isaac Rankin also kicked 4 straight. And
That was kind of like his welcome to the Crom moment.
And the winner of the Showdown medal was neither of them, Jordan Dawson. He even said Philthorpe should have won it.
Another reason that we have our awards now. And then in round 20, Crows won again, that time by 47. Taylor Walker kicked 7-4, but what really was known from that game was Alir and Lockie Jones bumping heads, and then 2 days later finally getting put in concussion protocols.
Not because they failed their test.
No, they totally didn't fail their tests.
No, out of an abundance of caution, the second worst AOC.
Power favored by 7.5. I think with Rosie in, that seems pretty fair. Yeah.
If
I think maybe take this down a couple of points.
if Rosie's at full health, I guess, how much the Power plan for some potential injury management there in terms of substitution. I think this will require a really heavy in the guts game again from Willem Drew. Just going to be a very physical battle in the midfield. Trying to see Jake Saligo and Willem Drew barrel through people both on offense and defense should be incredibly fun. Ethan, how many saltines?
5.
I think I've got 3 games that are 5, and this is one of them.
I've got 4. Because I was stuck deciding between a 4 and a 5 on a couple of them, since my rule is no half saltines. Even though it is easy to break saltines in half, we're not doing that here. Car call. For those of you who don't know, I came up with this name, or when Collingwood's the home team, Colcar, in honor of the great Brazilian rivalry, Fla-Flu.
Flamengo Fluminense, who share the Maracanã, I believe.
And I just think it's a funny, silly name for a rivalry. 2:40 a.m. Friday for us, 5:40 a.m. on the East Coast, 7:40 p.m. for the local crowd in Victoria and Tasmania and Queensland and New South Wales and the Capital Territory and Jervis Bay.
Did we cover everything?
Yeah, it's a Fox Sports 2 game. Carlton are in 6th at 5-2 because they lost to the Cats. Because they only won the free kick count 14-10 instead of 114-10.
And Collingwood are a potentially deceiving 10th considering their slow start after drawing with Essendon. Collingwood lead the all-time VFL-AFL series 131-129 with 4 draws. Of course, this has been an MCG constant since 1993. Only 2 of their meetings have been elsewhere, and one of that was forced by a strange virus from a foreign land. We know who did it. We know who's responsible. The Pies have won 8 of 10 meetings since 2017. The game has tilted the designated visiting team's way as well, especially in the last 3. They won all of those. 2022 round 23. It was fun.
I like that game a lot.
End of year home and away drama. I think that was what allowed the Pies to make top 4 as well. Last year, Collingwood won the round 10 meeting by 28 with Bobby Hill and Bo McCreary being accurate kicks and also very fast. Darcy Moore looked like he had an 11th intercept mark, and then it was ruled one of them came after a quarter siren.
Because if you get more than 10, Gil will kill you and eat you.
I'll come to your house and murder you!
I wonder if Andrew Dillon's inherited that role or if that's still going to be Gil's thing. Also, if I meet Gil, I'm going to ask him about this because I know he'd take it well, considering, his selfie during the Buddy thing or him kicking a torque with the guys from Marmalade. I want to meet Gil. He seems cool.
If anywhere, I'd expect him to be a showdown considering he's a Crows fan.
Carlton snapped their losing streak to the Pies in round 20. It wasn't a very lengthy streak, but they won by 17. 6 goals for Charlie Curnow, 3 for Jack Martin, and Jacob Wiedering was awesome like he always is.
This has been a really heavy pressure matchup each of the past few years. It makes sense given the midfield ranks, and Carlton just tend to respond to other teams' pressure by bringing more themselves in general. Maybe this is a case where you see Elijah Holland's body up in the midfield a bit more rather than swinging forward early on. Also said that maybe that could be a way to help manage Sam Walsh earlier in games. I think this is a pretty clear 5 Saltines out of 5.
Yep, 5 Saltines. We were talking Charlie Curnow because of his 6 goals. I was thinking when I was driving earlier today about Charlie Curnow and what he reminds me of with his body type, and I figured it out.
Okay, what is it?
Geodude, the Pokemon.
Geodude.
You get it, right? Because it's so strong.
But Geodudes have tiny little arms, don't they?
No, their arms are strong. So
maybe Graveler.
Well, he's got big bicep, so I think it works.
And you go with this, I guess. Charlie Geodude Curnow.
Well, no. So here's the thing. I was thinking about Geodude, and then I thought, I guess Graveler might make more sense, but people know Geodude. So I was thinking Geodude is kind of a mouthful. So do you call him Pokey because it's a Pokemon, or Rocky because it's a rock?
And the winner is Rocky!
All right, that solves that. From now on, he is, even though, Josh Rochelle is the Rocky music, right? Well, Josh Rochelle is Nona. We know that. So from now on, Rocky Curd.
Good luck with that.
I'm going to make this happen. It's going to be really funny if it turns out someone who constantly talks shit about Carlton fans comes up with a nickname for one of their players.
Is this more tangential than Reg?
Yes. And that's exactly how I like it.
Whole lot of injury tests for the Blues. We don't know about David Cunningham or Adam Chera.
Woof. Not woof.
There we go.
Not woof. I definitely said not woof. But it's not woof.
We're less clear on the status of one
Orazio Fantasia.
having been laid out with illness this past week. Jackson Binns was the late in on debut. I don't think
Professor.
Yeah, I guess. Nobody had to really scramble to get to the game for him, we think. I mean, I'm not thinking on a Dante Vizzantini level.
Yeah.
Professor or Bert, because Cuthbert. I believe Professor Binns' first name is Cuthbert.
Chesler Cuthbert.
Yeah, that's not going to fly.
Yes, his nickname is going to be Chesler. If there's one thing Australians know about baseball, it's a Nicaraguan third baseman who hit 27 career home runs. We found out today that Collingwood will be without a couple of key players because, yes, Carlton have a lot of injuries, but every team comes up with key injuries right before they face Carlton. This time it's Jordan DeGoey with a groin injury and Tom Mitchell with a foot injury. He was subbed out last week. At the time, I think it was just considered a tactical sub.
And I don't think we're going to change that.
Yeah, I don't think
there was
been conveyed to anyone that it was an injury sub, so I'm just going to roll with this. And if you don't like it,
I'm here to tell you right now, we don't care. Let me tell you something. We don't care.
I was thinking I would wait to use a Stephen A soundbite until somebody was caught using a particular drug like Lamar Odom.
Who was on crack?
With those outs, you'd imagine Finn McRae would get back in after 3 strong games in the VFL. But also, we're going to get our second player debuting beyond their 26th birthday this year. The first, of course, being
Sean Manna?
Yes, Sean Manna.
I was like, wait, is Sean Manna that old? How old is Patrick Voss? Yeah, it's Sean Manna. It's going to be Lockie Sullivan, who I really can't tell you.
I've been paying attention to him just because he's been a notable name in the VFL the past couple of years. Best and fairest for Footy each of the past 2. Captain in the VFL Team of the Year. And off to a good start as a midfield with some good ability to burst forward for the Pies. And with DeGoey out in particular, that seems like obviously can't fully replace DeGoey, but you need someone who has that ability to burst through stoppages and put on good kicks at speed. Maybe that would also mean Bo McCreary could get some more stoppage time, center square time in particular.
Here's what I'm interested in. Right now, Lockie Sullivan, and I want you to keep track on this. I want you to remember this number. He has 3,018 Instagram followers.
3,018. We're not keeping track of this as extensively as we are Devin Robertson, right?
Or, in my brief cricket knowledge, Mayank Yadav. I'm going to keep monitoring that.
Odds makers currently have the Blues as 7.5-point favorites. They've dealt with their injuries for longer and with fewer negative changes required this week, I would say okay. But considering the visiting team's track record in these games and also just the potential for shenanigans, this is not a game where I would recommend betting on anything.
The one factor I will consider, Collingwood needs it more, just based off of ladder position, but you do have Carlton coming off a loss, which I think offsets a bit of that.
And now, the most cracking game of round 8. Do you have this as your number one?
No.
Is that because Showdown?
No.
Melbourne versus Geelong then?
Nope. See, this game is going to be cracking. It is Sydney Derby 27.
It's second versus third, both at 6-1, and Americans can see this game on Fox Sports 1 at a reasonable hour.
8:45 p.m. on the West Coast Friday night, 11:45 p.m. on the East Coast, and 1:45 p.m. Saturday for the local crowd.
This better sell out the SCG, and it won't.
The reason that I cannot label this as the most cracking game is the same reason I couldn't label Geelong Carlton higher last week. Both are in really good position that, the ramifications of this game outside of, hey, you're our rival. Do you have something to say, Brian?
He's been reaching for the microphone, and now he's just going to probably jump off Ethan's bed.
Come on up. It's okay. If you want to say something, you want to go up there and do like a Baba Booey or something.
There's a lack of desperation in this game as compared to Collingwood or Adelaide.
Yeah.
There's been more like direct media build-up and like press conference build-up to this game, though, so that's why I have this higher.
Also, if we're ranking the 4 interstate rivalries in terms of crowd levels, Showdown is obviously number 1. And then I think I'd go Western Derby
before Sydney Derby, definitely.
And then Q Clash is a distant 4th.
Hopefully, we'll have less distance soon. This is another rivalry, Ethan, where the visiting team has had a really strong track record. 6 of 7 meetings since 2021 have gone to the visitors, including both last year.
The general trend in this rivalry has been Swans blowout wins and close Giants wins, although last year the Swans won on the road by 11.
Yeah, that was a game that I think got a little closer at the very end, but Sydney had a great forward strategy in that game, and I wouldn't be shocked if they try to replicate that with Will Hayward really manning up on Sam Taylor. Taylor had 5 goals kicked against him in the first half. And in general, the Sydney Talls had a focus on staying on their one-on-ones, getting good position so that the Smalls could pick up and wreak havoc. So high potential for some big Tom Papley celebrations, and I wouldn't say like a bag, but 3 or 4 from him would be a very good sign. Obviously, the Swans win.
So a satchel?
Merce.
It's not a purse, it's a satchel.
The round 7 meeting last year at the SCG had that phenomenal Giants comeback after the Swans led by 24 twice early in the fourth quarter. The Giants kicked 17 goals, 5 in that game. And Toby Green, who will be back from suspension to add some more fire, had the game-winning goal with 42 seconds left. He was everywhere in the forward half in that comeback. And the other thing I remember is Pete Laddams just letting Harry Himmelberg grab the ball straight off the throw-in before that. There are some cases where you definitely are okay with being the second to the ball.
Yeah, this was not one of them.
No.
We've talked about like that strategy,
but Pete Laddams is not the right guy to try it.
Especially not with like 45 seconds left in a 1-goal game.
Also going up against Harry Himmelberg and Laddams being the reckless player that he is. We've yet to see him at AFL level this year. Ethan's pleased about that.
Yeah, I'm just not a fan. He's probably one of those dudes. I haven't done a ton to look into it, but usually guys who are like that on the field tend to be like awesome people off it. Think Braden Maynard, but you know how it is. This will be game number 150 already for Ollie Florent,
who I always think of as being like a good bit shorter than 6 feet. His most memorable moment in the AFL, a last-second kick at the SCG. Oh, wait a minute, that fell short.
I mean, I just mostly think of him as being a really good player. I thought the first quarter last week, like if you wanted to show a newbie, like how do midfielders create goals?
Florent,
watch that first quarter. It was him and Errol Golden both doing it.
Golden, interestingly, played a lot of the second through fourth quarters in some much deeper spots. Not sure how much John Longmire was willing to experiment against a lesser club, but it's something to watch there.
Luke Parker might be ready to go from his arm injury. He was rehabbing in the VFL.
I'd say he's ready to go. He did just fine. He was maybe best on ground in that game.
Dane Rampy might be back from his hamstring injury, which, even though they've been fine defensively, I've just always really liked him, especially as a late-game clutch player. Like, every close Swans win seems to have three things. A key Tom Papley goal, James Rowbottom making important tackles. I mean, that also happens in Swans blowout wins and losses. And, like, a clutch Dane Rampy spoil or other one-percenter.
If they win a close one, he needs to celebrate by climbing the goalpost. Braden Campbell's been the sub for the Swans the past couple weeks. I imagine you drop him just to get in game time. But from there, where do you go with the other motion?
It's not like you have like some obvious old guys to manage. And even if you did, this wouldn't be the game for it.
So who do you go for there?
My guess was Robbie Fox.
Would you say straight out or make him the sub?
I think he goes straight out, and then I know tall subs aren't usually the thing, so it would be tough to do with Lewis Melican.
I think he needs to be in there one-on-one right away. Maybe have some dedicated one-on-ones right away to Jesse Hogan and Aaron Cadman on the tall side. Cadman's kicked a goal a game. It's not like James Jordan did poorly, but
no, I think you could do it with him, or maybe Joel Amarty could be at risk is another one.
The reason why I'd say keep Amarty in is to follow up with that strategy that worked in the last Sydney Derby, just occupy the tall defenders.
The other thing you could do, and this is a little far-fetched, but you could manage Taylor Adams.
That's the only one that
Maybe that's part of the plan coming back from injury anyway.
That's the only one that I was thinking could be managed. How rotten would that be over Adams? Finally getting back in, getting a couple games in. You're a former Giant, and you're held out of Sydney Derby.
Well, I'm sure if they did, it would have been conveyed to him before. So I don't think they will.
One more thing I find really puzzling is that the second Sydney Derby this year, the one at the Showground, is going to be in round 15. That seems far too early for this rivalry to be done for the year.
I kind of like just bunching up, matchup, like a rematch closer together, though.
I'm of the belief that you should be playing all 17 before rematches. I'd prefer that at least over having games bunched up.
I think just as a rare thing, having a couple of matchups here and there that kind of repeat close by is fun because, you know, it's like fresh in fans' minds.
Currently, the Swans are favored by 1.5. I would not say that there's a home field aspect to that, considering the nature of this rivalry. Perhaps with unclear status as of now on Stephen Cornelio and Sam Taylor, that's a bit more reasonable. By the time this episode is out, we'll be much closer to the list announcements, so we'll probably have more clarity from Adam Kingsley and staff then. I remember the half-forward group in general really lifting for the Giants as well in that win last year. So if Red Daniels is healthy as we expect him to be, watch for a big bounce-back game from him. Darcy Jones in his first Sydney Derby should be really fun. I would imagine the Swans pressure group like James Rowbottom would try to rough him up a bit right away, just like, well, welcome to the Derby, bitch.
My prediction here is the Swans finally win a close one because the 11-point win last year was actually their closest Sydney Derby win.
Right.
The last 4 Giants wins have been by a combined 6 points. I think it's the Swans' turn.
I remember going over this with you last year.
If this was a night game, I'd feel really confident in it because the Swans do that at night. In the daytime, it's usually just like they're better. They win by like 10. I don't know. I'm getting the feeling this is going to be a banger.
After 3 5-saltine games, I would imagine, or did you put Sydney Derby as a 4?
I was going back and forth on that, and if I could give half saltines, I would put it at 4.5.
Why did I
gave it 5. Oh, maybe we should do these on like, you know, on a 20 to 80 scale.
Maybe next time.
I want to talk to a footy scout to see and find out, do they use the 20-80 scale?
Well, we can talk to Pete from Rookie Me Central, who was with us on Donnie's Disposal.
You're right. Yeah, I think that would be fun. So basically the 20-80 scale, it's common in baseball scouting, and it's basically off, you know, like off of like standard deviations, like the bell curve. That's how that works. We could try different scales, but I thought just, you know, because of how cracking it is, I thought saltines would be appropriate. Saints and North at Marvel Stadium. This is a very Marvel game, although it can also be a Tasmania game.
Yeah, they've had a couple Blundstone Arena matchups in recent years. This is the first game of the round, I guess, that won't be on one of the main Fox Sports channels here in the U.S., a Fox Soccer Plus game at 4:35 p.m. local time. So for Americans, 2:35 a.m. Eastern, Saturday morning, 11:35 p.m. Pacific, Friday night. 14th versus 18th, and a rematch of the worst game of last year.
This is the sort of thing that if the Sickos committee was into, I mean, I know they have like some very preliminary knowledge of footy, but
This would be their Sickos game of the week.
oh, easily.
The entire thing that I have here in our notes about that meeting in round 8 last year is the score: North 4-10-34, defeated by the Saints 8-16-64 at just worst game of the year.
The rematch was kind of low scoring, but it was competitive. It was actually a kind of decent watch, and then the fourth quarter was really bad. North kicked 1-4, and the Saints finally beat them. They ended up winning that one 9-15-69 to 9-7-61. And entering the fourth, North had kicked 8-3, and the Saints had kicked 4-12. And then they put Rowan Marshall forward. I'm looking forward to him matching up with Tristan Jerry, so that'll be compelling, I think. I think Marshall hasn't been great yet this year.
Well, he's also dealing with a little bit of knee trouble. He's not on the injury report, but I said all along, especially with how Jack Hayes has been in the VFL, that there's a chance for management there one of these next 2 weeks against one of the bottom two. I would hope that Marshall is in, but I would understand management and keeping him fresher for Lloyd Meek instead.
You know what I would do is just play them both and let Marshall do some forward stuff.
If his knee's all right, then yeah.
But I think that's something that, like, Rowan Marshall has not been bad this year, but last year he was special, and this year he's just kind of been there.
Last year, we wondered why he only got 2 Brownlow votes, and that was a big inspiration for America's Brownlow. He barely missed out on the All-Australian team.
Maybe whoever has the most, America's Brownlow votes minus regular Brownlow votes could get, like, the Rowan Marshall Award or something. But one of the things that hasn't been discussed with the Saints this year is he's just been okay. And I think this game will be a great test for both him and Jerry, because Jerry has played really well this year.
Some changes are coming for the Saints for sure, with Jack Higgins' 3-game suspension upheld for that dangerous tackle on Alir.
Big mistake not using the good bloke argument.
Even with the argument, good luck with the nature of that tackle. I know that it took a really long time,
3.5 hours.
And David Zeta nearly missed out on the SZA concert because of it. With Higgins out, I'm expecting a more magnified role for Darcy Wilson, maybe keeping it more to the inside. Also potential for Zach Jones to come back after a demotion, but for some reason Ross Lyon has it in for him. So maybe this is a time to give Paddy Dow his first AFL game as a Saint. I would say the only other change would be, I guess, Jimmy Webster in, considering he's available for maybe Dougal Howard or Liam Stalker. Stalker has definitely been down the past fortnight or so.
Yeah, I think he was probably the worst player for either team in that game.
Worst on round?
I don't know about for the whole round, but within that game. On North side, Jai Simpkin is, I guess, questionable. He has not played very well. He was more in contests last week than before, but has not been good.
Strange to have him more in contests with the return of George Wardlaw to the middle. I mean, I like the general physicality that North brings, but didn't expect him to have that sort of assignment.
I like George Wardlaw. He gets after it.
I want Harry Sheasel to get more contested time as well. So maybe that would come from resting Simpkin if needed. Look, we expect Sheasel to get that time at some point, but just maybe not under Alistair Clarkson.
It sounds like our guy, Eddie Ford, is going to be available, so that's good. Yeah, he was subbed out within the last couple weeks at one point and had a hip injury. It all kind of becomes a blur.
It's 2020's North. That's how it is.
Yeah, he was subbed out in round 6, and then I guess he missed last week. Will Phillips got subbed out last week. It was a You Suck sub.
That was definitely a You Suck sub.
Which team has used the most You Suck subs so far? So context, we've been tracking every sub this year. It is either tactical, medical, You Suck, or Victory Cigar.
Or unused, we've had 2.
Which team has used the most You Suck subs?
The Adelaide Crows?
No, they've used 2.
It wouldn't be the Bulldogs because they just use perplexing subs.
Yep. They actually are one of the teams one of the most tactical. They've used the tactical sub 4 times.
Well, tactical in air quotes is just whatever the fuck Beveridge thinks. Tactical is kind of a catch-all for anything that doesn't fit cleanly into the other categories.
Yeah, or sometimes it's just like, we need to go smaller or faster. Or
sometimes it's a clear tactic. Otherwise, it's we want fresh legs. I know I'm giving the Eagles a fair number of You Sucks, but they had a couple injury subs as well. I actually don't think it's West Coast, is it?
No, they are tied for the second most with 3.
Who is it then?
Hawthorn, 4. Hawthorn has not had a single medical sub yet, though. 5 teams have not had a You Suck sub yet this year. Brisbane, Fremantle, Geelong, Port Adelaide, and the Bulldogs.
Would make sense for the Bulldogs to just have the most tacticals.
It's like they never sub out the logical guy. Anyway,
we'll talk more about the Dogs as we get into the Sunday games.
I think it's funny that right after getting sent back to the 2s, Tyler Sellers played well. I think he deserves a couple more weeks before coming right back up.
Don't just keep shuttling a guy.
That doesn't work in any sport, especially if you want them to be like a long-term piece. You know, shuttling a guy back and forth is what you do for a marginal filler guy. Saints are favored by 36.5.
I would bring this down because Ross ball.
This is the stoppable force and movable object. So the 2 things that make this game intriguing are a low-scoring team, North's given up at least 100 every game, and the Jimmy Webster thing. Now, DraftKings, looking at DraftKings, because Bovada actually doesn't have a ton on some of these games, actually has this as one of the highest over-unders of the week at 174.5. The only ones that are higher are the Thursday and Friday night games at 175.5.
That seems like easy money. Are you just expecting them to get a bunch of midfield turnovers and be able to move quickly?
Possible. Is Max King could be back this week and could go off? I don't know if the odds makers on these are putting in tremendous time, honestly. But that and the Jimmy Webster storyline are what give this game some spice. Otherwise, they'd be like unsalted saltines to cheat with Caillou's dad. So I give it 2 saltines.
I don't think there's anything lower than that. This is my lowest of the round.
You know, Benjamin, 78% of our listeners are between 18 and 35 years old, so they probably want to start a podcast like we did.
How did you know that number, Ethan?
Thanks to the analytics we have for Spotify for Podcasters.
Formerly known as Anchor, sorry Frio fans, Spotify for Podcasters has tools that allow you to record and edit your podcast from your phone or your computer. No fancy software needed.
It's so easy you can edit it while drunk.
And Spotify for Podcasters doesn't just allow you to upload to Spotify, you can also distribute your podcast on platforms like Apple, Stitcher, and more, just like we do.
Best of all, it's completely free.
Not only is it free, you can even make money from listener support or ad revenue. Hint, hint.
Download the Spotify for Podcasters app or go to podcasters.spotify.com to get started today.
As a reminder, if you want to follow us further, I imagine that a lot of you already are, but we are on Twitter collectively at Americans Footy. We initial our tweets so you know which of us is saying what. We're also on Instagram and YouTube, and who knows what platform we'll be coming to next.
I'm at Castle Media.
I am at Benjamin HK01, and Brian Harambe has he gone under the bed?
Seems to.
Yeah, he's on Instagram at cat named Brian. He has been really acting up the last couple times we've recorded. It's been fun. His shadow boxing has continued. You probably have been hearing his bell a decent amount in the background. I enjoy that sound a lot. We picked things up with another cracking game at the MCG. Melbourne and Geelong, 7:30 p.m. local time. An FS2 broadcast for Americans, 5:30 a.m. Eastern, 2:30 a.m. Pacific. Fourth against first. These teams actually haven't met at the MCG in over 3 years. Geelong's hosted Melbourne each of the past 3. Plus, they had the prelim at Optus Stadium in 2021, where I guess Melbourne was the designated home team. I'm just disappointed this still is not a double up, Ethan. They had 3 memorable meetings in 2021, well, the last 2 in particular, and they haven't doubled up since. How many saltines do you give this game? 4. I also give this 4. I've got that at the top of my second tier. Main rivalries first. I want this to be a real rivalry, but it will require more double ups.
And Melbourne having more of a fan base that shows up regularly. It's like, you know, I'm scarred for life by some of the losses to the D's from 2021, but it helps that Melbourne doesn't have much of a fan base that bothers you. They've got a couple of cool people on Twitter, and that's like it.
The guys from Demonland and Debrief, we've been talking with Kat Oxley, who's a friend of Coach Hess's. Been a college Thursday meeting as of late. They had Thursday meetings at the Cattery each of the past couple years. Round 15 last year was Chris Scott's 300th game coached already.
I woke up like 2 minutes into this game in New York, and Jeremy Cameron was like on the ground, not moving, because he had a little appointment with Gary Rowan's shoulder. And then Rowan stepped up and kicked 3 goals. And I forget if that game was the one that gave us the gif.
I think it was the year before that gave us the Jake Rippon gif.
Yes, but it's the one I post like at the end of every win, basically. Rhys Stanley came back from injury in that game and actually did a pretty good job on Max Gawn, all things considered.
And the ruck has been a real worrisome spot for the Cats the past couple weeks.
Yeah,
Conway got beaten by
Oscar McInerney
for that quarter or so. And
quarter and a half, yeah. And then last week, Stanley just got his ass kicked by Mark Pittenet. But I still think just matchup-wise and mobility-wise, I think you go with Stanley again, but you expect Blitzovs to have to jump into that role a bunch.
Conway was one of the best on in the Cats blowout VFL win. That's a game where you can really see just how much a lack of depth can permeate your reserve side as well.
Geelong's VFL last year. But yeah, I would go Stanley with help from Blitzovs. And then Tom Stewart's back. Patrick Dangerfield comes out for 4 to 6 weeks. Let me try to do a slightly better Chris Scott impression this time. Well, the doctor said it'll be about 4 to 6 weeks.
Too British.
I'm not very good at it. I do it better when I'm like talking to myself in the car. I should just record it there. But well, the doctor said it'll be about 4 to 6 weeks. Fortunately, we're in a position with a lot of players ready to step up and take a crack at it. And we'll be happy to have Patrick back out there. I don't know. I'm going to give up on this for now. It always sounded way better in my car. But my guess is we either see him right before the bye at Sydney or right after the bye back at the G against Carlton.
Is this Mitch Hardy's debut?
I don't know, because it's like, who comes out defensively for Stewart? What do you do to elevate Tom Atkins? Because Tom Atkins, I mean, you could keep him in the sub role because he did a good job of it, but I would put him back into the full 22. Maybe if you can get Hardy in there, that is the sub. I was thinking make Gary Rowan the sub. If you have to bring him in for, a defender, you just slide someone like Mark Blitzovs or Mark O'Connor out. Or maybe, I know he's been good as a tagger, but O'Connor was quiet last week. Maybe you manage him.
I was thinking send him to Petrarca.
Yeah, I think I would keep O'Connor in just because of his defensive ability, but this is a nice problem to have.
Geelong, suffering from success.
I've said this before. I'm enjoying it. It's nice knowing that someone deserving of a spot is not going to be in the team. Maybe at some point you manage Ollie Dempsey or one of the other younger guys. You manage someone older like Mitch Duncan, or again, I'm in favor of the idea of Zach Toohey playing every second or third week. While it would be tough to take him out after how well he played this past one, I could totally live with it.
The Demons had no injuries in their Anzac Eve win, but the forward mix does not seem settled. Harrison Petty has been struggling, and I wouldn't be shocked to see him get demoted. It's to the point that Harry Pettygoat on Twitter is currently a Daniel Turner stan account. Like, where did his forward craft come from? I'm still surprised. A single goal game in the VFL clearly was enough to turn selectors' heads, and then he kicked 3 on Wednesday. I would assume you try him there again, but have him ready to go back and get Shane McAdam ready for action. How much do you mess with things is the question. One move that I would make is Bailey Laurie in for Caleb Windsor. Maybe try Windsor as the sub wouldn't be a bad move. And after Laurie kicked 2 goals in the fourth quarter last week, I think he's shown that he's deserving of a spot in the 22. Could help take some of the heat off Christian Petrarca and Clayton Oliver going from the center to half forward as well.
My thing has been the D's need to avoid like a Wiedebrand situation where they just keep going back and forth between a couple pieces that end up not really offering that much over each other and nobody ends up separating themselves from the crowd. But because I want them to lose this game, I hope they have a Wiedebrand situation.
I think it's less Wiedebrand here and more they haven't tried McAdam at the AFL level yet. So give him a game or two, give Petty a game or two to find his form again in the forward half, and then see what strings he could pull elsewhere. Does Adam Tomlinson get back in defense? I know you'd want him to get back in defense because he has that sort of frostball potential.
Caps favored by 1.5 seems fair. I maybe put this a couple points higher, but
I'm not bothered by this being such a close line.
I mean, I see this as basically, it's pretty 50-50.
This is a game where I'm really going to be focusing on how Melbourne responded to midfield after a down game there last week where it was their 50s that lifted, especially the forward 50.
Melbourne also had a not great midfield game against the Lions.
So make it 2 in a row, and with the Blues coming up, they've got to get things right there very quickly. Been a quieter couple weeks for Jack Viney. Needs to get kind of more of that grunt work done right at the stoppage, and I think there's a lot of potential to do that, especially with Dangerfield out.
One-on-one that I think is going to end up getting magnified in this game, Jack Henry on Jacob Van Rooyen. I thought he was excellent last week. I would have had him on my ballot for coach's vote.
I still think of him as being undersized for that key defensive role, but he's shown his ability to work that well very frequently. I think back to how he shut down Buddy in the 2022 grand final, among a lot of other important jobs. And hey, if this game's close, you could swing him forward for a massive mark, and Jeremy Cameron will celebrate it.
Oh, did you see Jeremy Cameron's newest video?
I saw one where he talked about his broken finger.
Okay, so it was like a 6-7 minute video about just him on his off day going down to Lorne with his fiance and daughter. And I didn't really know much about the Great Ocean Road before, but it's like Victorian Highway 1. And I think it would be really fun to do. You know, there's like the 12 apostles, although there was only 9 of them and now there's 8. So maybe it should have been the 9, whatever the 9th day of Christmas thing was. I can't remember.
It's different in different songs.
Oh, well, come up with something better there. Anyway, I care less about the walk formation. I just think exploring all those little coastal towns would be fun. And that's now something I would be very interested in doing, even if it would involve doing a little driving on the other side of the road. I think that would be really fun.
West Coast and Essendon. This has been a more frequent double up. Makes sense with the strong Western fan base from Essendon. This will be a double up again this year. Round 15, the last of the bye rounds, they'll be at Marvel. But
so there are a couple of matchups from this round that'll be coming up like round 15.
Yeah,
you got that. You got, I think, Geelong Carlton from last week as well. So
Sydney Derby.
Yeah, we got a couple of these like earlier double ups, which I don't mind.
This will be a 6:10 p.m. local start in Perth, 8:10 p.m. for the Victorian crowd, 6:10 a.m. Eastern, 3:10 Pacific Saturday morning for Americans on Fox Soccer Plus. The Eagles will be getting back 2 extremely important pieces in Tom Barras and Harley Reid, whereas Essendon, there's a bit less certainty about how their midfield mix is going to be structured in the end. Ethan, Saltines, 3. I think I have this as 3 as well. I wouldn't be shocked if we have like the exact same order of games as we did last time.
You talked about Essendon being very popular in the West. And, you know, this is their only trip out west this year, which also means it's the closest they get to Uganda.
Ooh.
Because they are, of course, Uganda's team.
I want Kupi Bly to show up.
We needed, I wish I'd thought of this at the time, a Ugandan version of It's a Draw.
I'm tempted.
Bombers swept last year, 50-point win at Optus, and then in round 21, they won by 1.
That round 11 game, Nick Martin did some amazing things coming back home. Last year, we saw a number of WA players save their best efforts for their trips back home. I'm thinking about, we'll talk about some other players in that category very soon, actually. But that round 21 game, actual really entertaining Eagles game, one of the few last year. Jai Menzie went over the top to Kyle Langford with just over a minute left for the win.
But I remember that game as it's like, damn, it would have been cool for the Eagles to win this one. But also like, hey, they played pretty well.
Also, we only had to wait 2 weeks for them to actually get their annual Marvel Stadium win.
I'm actually kind of excited for this because still don't know if Essendon are good. They currently sit in 7th at 4-2-1 after the Noble draw. The Eagles in 15. But like I said, the last few weeks, even with that loss, and there were competitive games into the second half.
As I mentioned, the Eagles will be getting Reid and Barras back. I feel bad for Harry Edwards that he'll probably have to make way. Not like he did all that poorly against Ben King, but there's a clear talent gap there still. Noah Long wasn't on the injury report after missing with a hip injury, so hopefully he's back in. From there, though, I think the other midfield and half-forward ranks have a lot of questions. Campbell Chester's been quiet the past couple weeks. Dom Sheed has not done much as the sub, and you've got Zane True and Harvey Johnston banging down the door for True a re-emergence and for Johnston a debut. Through all this, I would say Luke Edwards is probably the weaker link there. I don't have anything against him, but I think he's just hasn't been AFL caliber as of late, and I'd say the same about Chesser. So if there's 2 to make way in the midfield, Chesser and Edwards.
Harry Jones was subbed out because he, I don't know if he broke his nose or if it was just bleeding, but on the injury report, you could just sum it up as
Face.
But he's cleared to play. And then Archie Perkins will be back from his hamstring injury. And I think he and Sam Durham have been their best midfielders this year. I know a lot of people have gone on about Zach Merritt. And honestly, I don't think Merritt's been bad. I just think he's been a volume player, but not in a bad way. Not in a way that, like, it doesn't contribute to the team. It's just there are guys that, like, I notice more watching each game. Dylan Shield and Elijah Sadas have made their case in the VFL. I want to see Sadas get full games. I mean, it's not because the Eagles aren't competitive, especially at home now, but just, an out-of-state trip is when you're more likely to manage a guy. Sadas needs to be in there. We call him Varda.
We've gone over the connection before. Listen to our previous episodes.
I think that's actually really likely.
Yeah, Ryan, I remember talking about this. I think resting Goldstein is the obvious one.
Goldstein's older. Draper's coming off an injury and hasn't been his best. Essendon favored by 10.5. Seems appropriate.
I'd push it out to 15.5.
I still think the effect of playing in Perth is worth noting, even if the Eagles are due for like a real stinker after playing 4 competitive games in a row.
I'd expect the stinker a bit more on the road, but these guys have been hard to predict. I mentioned during that last preview that some Westerners in 2023 had their best games when going back home. That was certainly the case for Liam Baker and Shea Bolton in round 13 last year when they played the Dockers out west. Here in round 8, Richmond and Freo will be facing off at the G for the first time in 6 years.
It'll be 1 p.m. local time, 11 a.m. in Western Australia, 11 p.m. on Saturday on the East Coast of the United States, 8 p.m. here. This is another Fox Soccer Plus game. Tigers in 16th at 1-6. Dockers in 8th at 4-3 after a really important win over the Bulldogs. Richmond had a win last year that really put Freo into deep shit, I think. A 15-point win at Optus. They seem to have had some fun meetings the last few years.
Yeah, Richmond answered Freo's pressure with more of their own, and instead of trying to avoid the corner, said, we're going to run through you regardless, and it ended up working. Shea Bolton had 14 disposals and a goal in the last. That was also the game where Ryan Mansell got suspended 3 games for his concussing bump at James H. He started 2024 hot, has been a bit quieter as of late. Also, thinking about this game reminds me that Marlon Pickett's aggravated burglary case is still ongoing. I also thought of that just because he had a very magnified role last week as a tagger. You send him to Caleb Sarong? That's the obvious tagging choice among this Dockers lineup.
I guess maybe just because of the current structure of Richmond's midfield, that would make sense. The 2021 meeting, both teams were inaccurate. It was a 4-point Freo win that really secured Richmond not playing finals as part of their late season slide that year. But my favorite meeting was under the roof at Marvel in 2022.
The only draw of 2022, Noah Cumberland takes the mark and lays on.
On the Wikipedia page for After the Siren goals, list of kicks after the siren in the VFL, AFL, you have missed opportunities. Almost all of them are no score or behind.
And then there's Cumberland.
Shit. They took it off the list, actually.
They did?
Yeah, this list does not include instances where an opportunity for a set shot after the siren is passed up in favor of playing on. I guess maybe that's because we know guys who would have had a chance were on the wrong side of midfield, but that's an unfortunate change. But yeah, it was an iconic moment. Also, Noah Balta waiting too long to take a set shot and then getting smothered by Michael Frederick. It was just everything that fit into how Richmond would lose close games, except
they didn't lose.
Yeah.
That was part of probably the craziest home and away round we've ever experienced as Footy fans, 2022 round 19. Great news for Richmond. Jaden Short looks set to return from his calf injury. Wasn't sure about the length of that, but they looked very unsure going out of the back half on Wednesday, and his kick-ins have been a stabilizing factor for them, especially because it allows Nick Flostone to get into position sooner. We're looking at a 3-week timeline for Jacob Hopper as of now with his hamstring injury. I like seeing Tyler Sonzi getting really important touches throughout their VFL outing this past week. He hasn't played there much at the AFL level, and there's no reason not to try new things, take what's working from the reserves and bring it up to the top level. In a year that Adam Uze really has to just try and find what can work for this next era of Richmond football.
I think this will be a cool test for Richmond because of the specific style that Freo plays. Yeah, they put on so much pressure. We'll see in different lines who can respond to pressure. Speaking of pressure, I thought about this earlier. I forget if I thought about it in the shower last night or when I was driving today. I think it was when I was driving today.
Instead of shower thoughts, you tend to have car thoughts.
Lately. But if Carlton have a makeshift back line, like Bobby Hill has to be the key for Collingwood to pressure them.
Hill along with McCreary. But as I said earlier, with DeGoey in particular, maybe you put McCreary more on the ball in the center square, having a bit more of that defensive midfield job. I'm also going to highlight the ruck matchup for this Richmond and Freo game because Tobin and Curvis against Sean Darcy, that's just two big-ass dudes getting at it.
That's another case of guys being dudes.
What's better than this? Guys being dudes.
Freo could get some boosts to a forward line that actually played pretty well last week, despite being kind of pieced together. Sam Switkowski and Jai Amos, both possible returns. You know, we saw how bad it was when they were missing both of them and Michael Frederick. Josh Draper, who hadn't been playing all that well, got subbed out with a hamstring injury. I would just get Carl Warner back in there. That's my pick.
Has he still not been in since that concussion round one?
Yeah. I mean, Ethan Hughes is an option. I guess so is Corey Wagner, but I'd go with Warner.
And Warner was the one that stood out among those ranks for me as well. As much as I like Hughes and had him as my sleeper last year, he's getting all the older side and hasn't started as well in terms of more one-on-one play. And you've got more answers on the outside this year as well, where Hughes had been patrolling in the past. Freo might have a bit of a tall squeeze coming up, though, if Amos is back in, because Pat Voss had a nice debut and can provide some pressure at ground level. Plus, you've got Josh Tracy in there, who could also present as like a third ruck option if really needed.
Well, what I really like about Tracy is his full field marking ability, as I've said.
That's the thing there where, you know, they could make this tall situation work, like the Giants have with Jesse Hogan roving as a full field mark in addition to his excellent kicking to start the year, like the Blues have done with Harry Mackay at his less accurate moments. It would be tough for someone...
Even in some of his more accurate moments, they still get him out there.
Fair enough. But it would be tough to squeeze anyone else out for the Dockers, especially after really a team win this past week where there weren't as many big individual performers, and it was just a collective success. Saltines? 2. If I could split things down the middle, I'd definitely put this at 2.5 or 5 out of 10. I think I narrowly put this at 3 because of my questions with selection. I think there's only one true 2 game for this round. Dockers are 11.5 point favorites as of now. They've done well at the G in the past.
Yeah, that line seems low. Although, yeah, it's still hard to trust team making the cross-country trip. Just Richmond's very limited right now. So I'll take Freo by probably about 4 goals. Bulldogs hosting Hawthorn at Marvel.
First season where they aren't playing at Utah since 2021. In fact, this is just a one-time matchup this year, which is disappointing given the intrigue in the past few meetings.
11 p.m. Pacific time, Saturday night, 2 a.m. Eastern time, Sunday morning, 4 p.m. locally. It's on Fox Soccer Plus. I guess we're not doing the put a big game like middle of Sunday afternoon, although we do have a Sunday nighter this week. But
I mean, this is that sort of later Sunday time most of the time. I rank this narrowly as a 3 Saltine game as well.
I gave this one 2.
I always have no clue about the Bulldogs, so there's more natural intrigue with the Bulldogs for me than for a lot of other teams. And given how Hawthorn has been able to match up against them a little bit, that's why I'm still clinging on to a little hope about this game. I put this below West Coast Essendon and Richmond Freo, though.
I did too. We'll go through our rankings at the end. I don't think they'll be the same, but I think they'll be close. When they played in round 7 last year, Liam Jones was awesome, and the Dogs won by 29, and Toby McLean was the unused sub.
Round 22 was the Launceston meeting. The Hawks won by 3 in an inaccurate game where they overcame a slow start, not something they did much at all in the past couple years. Meanwhile, this was the game, I was right, where Tom Liberatore got concussed, and that was what started the Bulldogs' tailspin. Do you remember how that game ended?
Tim English took the ball out of the goal square.
Why not Ed Richards?
I think we had this discussion last year. If you were to rank all 22 Bulldog options, I think English would have been at best number 18 or 19. Probably number 22. Looks like they will be getting Jamari Ugle-Hagan back this week, and Rory Lobb not doing much last week helps make that an easier decision.
They'll also be getting Libba. It was a concussion the week before, and stomach bug this past week.
Yobogoya?
Some sort of gastro.
Everyone should know about Yobogoya.
With Cody Waitman out, I said Artie Jones before. They said Artie Jones on the In the Mix article. Please make this a reality.
Also, Riley West is out. I'm surprised they didn't challenge the high bump on Brandon Walker. Also, get Riley Sanders back in there. Taking him out was stupid.
Well,
maybe manage Harvey Gallagher for a week.
Well, also, there's room with West out as well. So there's an option there. I actually was okay with, the suspension being leveled in the first place. We've talked about a lot how there needs to be more emphasis on the action rather than the outcome. And even though Walker was concussed, that's a play with enough potential to cause serious head injury that it does need to be disciplined. Speaking of accepted suspensions, Mabior Chol's one-game suspension for striking Errol Golden was accepted despite grainier footage. I thought he had a slight chance to get off in a Jesse Hogan sort of way.
I thought it was an open hand push to kind of like the upper chest area.
I would have felt more okay with them accepting it had Mitch Lewis not been confirmed out. But now that he is, what's the forward look? I mean, obviously Blake Hardwick is staying forward now, but where else do you go in terms of taller options?
You might be able to get Nick Watson back from syndesmosis already. Last week, they managed Massimo D'Ambrosio. He'll be back.
I'm waiting for a real Fantasia-like call with his name.
The problem is they don't get a lot of BT games because they're not good enough.
2026, maybe we'll get a real good Massimo D'Ambrosio.
You had your chance on Easter Monday.
You blew it. It feels to me even like Jack Ginnivan has played a lot more than 49 games just because of how much he's been in the news over the past couple years. But somehow this is only going to be his 50th AFL outing.
He's an 8, but it's only his 50th game. That was the stupidest thing people have ever gotten mad about.
I would love for Hawthorn to make a banner with that being the subject.
I don't think their fans are funny enough. I think the Orange Team's fans would. I loved what one of the Frio podcasts had last week. I wish it was a real banner. It was from the Purple Ray. After last week, we're not all that hopeful, but the biggest disgrace is still Rory Lobb's socials. Damn! Bulldogs favored by 24.5, which when you just compare the strengths of the team, like when you just look at how good is one team, how good is the other, makes sense. But I think this is a matchup that I always look at as the Hawks have a chance because they do have the midfield that can line up and neutralize the Dogs' strength. And then it's up to the Bulldogs, more marginal players and depth guys doing stuff. And we've seen how often they don't do that.
Or is this just a game where the Bulldogs' talls all cook? There's potential for some real Frost ball. And also, this is from Josh Gablich. Frost is on track to hit a contract trigger that would see him get another year on his deal and be there automatically through 2025. So Frost ball may live on.
Last week was the first time we really had true Frost ball this year.
Maybe that's why the talk about Ethan Phillips maybe getting his chance for a debut was magnified a bit this week. But Frost ball is good for fans.
I give this game 2 Saltines.
I said this was a narrow 3 for me. This is my clear number 8 game.
I also have this as a clear number 8, but I can't be fooled into a game involving Hawthorn or North not being one of the 2 least cracking games of the round, as much as I want to believe that they're going to entertain. I'll believe it when I see it.
I have a feeling that we have probably the same bottom 5 in our rankings. Saints North last. Yes. Bulldogs Hawks 8.
Yep.
Is Richmond Frio your 7th?
Yep.
Then West Coast Essendon 6?
If that game was not in Perth, I'd probably have it lower. Melbourne Geelong 5.
I actually have that as a narrow 4, basically tied with this last one, which is a great segue into actual Sunday night football. Play the John Williams music, editing Benjamin. Because of the Queensland and Northern Territory Labor Day holiday, we've got a true Sunday night Q clash. And it's also great timing with all the Queensland NRL teams having played a good bit earlier in the weekend. But 7:10 p.m. local time at the Gabba, 5:10 a.m. Eastern, 2:10 a.m. Pacific for Americans. I hope this crowd is actually good because I think Q Clash might have been the worst home crowd last year for the Lions.
to this point, it's just been
a rivalry in name.
Yeah, which is unfortunate because it's had some moments like in the second meeting last year.
He fucking grabbed my nuts. Tuke Miller was phenomenal in that game. Won the Marcus Ashcroft medal for having a clinical tag on Lachie Neal, but also got suspended for that squirrel grip. And then the Suns lost the next week and their season was over at that point.
It also doesn't help that since 2018, only one meeting, the second meeting in 2022, was decided by less than 40 points.
Was that round 19 in 2022 or round 20?
Round 19. It was a 17-point Lions win.
Once again, round 19 of 2022 delivered. The first meeting last year was the GABA meeting in round 10, a 43-point Lions win, where Joe Danaher and Eric Hipwood were both back in form, and Lachie Neal was easily best on ground. The Lions lead Q-Clash all-time 18-7, but the Suns did break that 9-game losing streak head-to-head last time out, and all three prior full-time Suns head coaches and one of their two caretakers in Stephen King last year won the first Q-Clash they coached. So trends here could very well be on Dimma and the Suns' side. This will be a nice opportunity to see just how much each team buys into the rivalry. I think this will be a very heavy pressure game just with the midfields that we have of the Suns wanting to get things right after some questionable discipline the past couple weeks, especially 2 weeks out. Big boost for the Lions in Big O, likely to return from his concussion. That's an easy swap there with Darcy Fort. It's not an easy swap for the other injury, though, Ethan.
Yeah, Kalachi comes out with his hamstring injury. James Tunstall had played pretty well against the Cats and then was not so good last week. So I don't know if he comes into the 22. Devin Robertson is still out for 3 weeks. And then James Madden's coming off an injury from the VFL. Maybe they could go with Bruce Revel. Is it Revel or Reveley? I think it's Revel.
Yeah,
I like his hair.
And also, is it Wagon Wheel his song?
Oh, yes. Even more reason. So, like I meant to talk about with the Giants earlier, maybe they could manage Xavier O'Halloran. Just don't manage him for a home game because X Gon Give It To You is a great goal song.
I would want Bruce Revel in for the sake of Wagon Wheel, but there's another guy who can roam the halfback and is a smart kick on the young side, who looks to be getting a contract extension soon and has the coolest name in the AFL.
Shadow Brain.
I would say Revel is the more likely of the two, but I don't think anything's off the table after how shaky the Lions have been to start the season.
Here's the thing. You're 2-5,
but the season's also not lost at this point.
You need a shot in the arm, play Shadow Brain. I really think you'll be looking back at this season one of two ways. Either our season turned around when we played Shadow Brain, or we never got it together because we didn't play Shadow Brain. And I think you could apply that as well with Richmond and Steely Green, even though, I mean, Richmond, they're all hurt. But yeah, play Steely Green, play Shadow Brain.
Get them to play against each other.
Gold Coast managed Ethan Reed last week. Would be fun to see him back in just because his temper kind of showed in a negative way against the Swans. I think it would be fun in like a high energy, high temper game to see what happens with him. Maybe they try Bodie Uland against small forwards.
I still have not been convinced by him, and
that hasn't really moved me either.
What has moved us in the past is Joel Jeffrey, and he's had a really versatile start to the year in the reserves after being a VFL Premiership player in 2023. He's lined up at center half forward to start some games recently, and then we know he's able to shift into both 50s. He seems like the right person to have in there, especially as you're looking toward their upcoming trip to Darwin. You want somebody from the Northern Territory to be there and really lift things. It was, I believe, in those Darwin games a couple of years ago where we first really turned our attention toward him. So I would love for him to get another opportunity.
No disrespect to Ben Long, but first off, I don't even think of Ben Long as really like a forward.
An AFL level forward, yeah.
Second, I'd rather go younger, and I'm surprised that Ben Long is only 26. He looks like he's in his mid to late 30s, honestly, if not older than that. I think it's just the beard. Some people's beards make them look a little older. His makes him look a lot older.
I actually don't think I've ever seen him clean shaven.
I just found a couple photos of it, and it's a big difference. And then, yeah, Joel Jeffrey, much more of a wow factor, much more upside. That's where I would go.
Honestly, looking at these Ben Long photos, it's any facial hair that does it. The mustache, too.
Lions favored by 13.5. I think this is a really tough line to set.
All the rivalries have actual juice going into them other than just the fact that they're rivalries. And with the Suns still working out how their youngsters will fit in, with the Lions' weird home struggles, all their venue trends being flipped, I have very little that I can really read going into this game, but I would expect Tuke Miller to try to repeat that tag on Lockie Neal, especially with the additional forces that the Suns now have in the middle in the forms of Will Graham and Sam Closey.
Do you go with Miller because it's worked before, or do you just go with whoever you think can get under Neal's skin the most? That's as important, if not more important, than just outplaying him.
I think Tuke's got the ability to get under his skin. We've seen it. Maybe you give Will Graham and Ethan Reed some early opportunities, but have Miller be that main guy. If Tuke has to come off, try those other options, but discipline on the Suns' end is something about which I'm quite concerned, especially when it comes to that Neal tag.
Q-Clash 27 will be round 20 at People First Stadium.
Still doesn't sound right to me.
How many of these teams will still be contending for final spots when they meet again? I think we might get in the spot where that's neither of them are in great shape, but neither can afford to lose that game, and it's basically an eliminator.
If it's an eliminator for the Suns, then they'll have exceeded my expectations.
I think their schedule's friendly enough to keep them in this thing. You gave this game how many saltines?
This is one of my 4 saltine games.
I gave it 5.
Really? Wow.
Yes, I said it's the least impressive crowd of the rivalries, but I think this is just a colossal game. It's a really important matchup because the Lions have to win their next 4 games heading into the bye. And for the Suns, it's a chance to really show something on the road because they've been great at home so far and not so much on the road.
And also the chance for this to actually become a rivalry. As I said, I basically have this tied in 4th with Melbourne and Geelong, and I've got the 3 big rivalries. Thursday through Saturday afternoon is my top 3.
The Suns have not won outside of People First Stadium
this year.
Will we find out that it's just they have to be in Queensland, or that it's specifically People First Stadium, or no correlation? I don't know. So yeah, this is a 5 saltine game for me, even if it's going to be a 3 saltine crowd. I just think the ramifications of this game are really important. So you rank this as
basically tied for 4th.
But where'd you put it officially? If you had to order them, no ties.
I honestly am thinking right now I might actually have this as 4th just because of the extra desperation level that this has for the Lions in particular. Melbourne and Geelong, there's no real desperation. I still have Sydney Derby ahead of Carcall, even with the Pies still trying to figure out how good they are.
So then you've got Showdown as number 1.
I've actually got that as 3, but a very strong 3.
You have Sydney Derby at number 1?
That's how amped I am for this Sydney Derby and the hopes of it actually being a close one at the SCG.
So I've got Sydney Derby at 4 because really, there isn't that much on the line. I mean, they're both really good, and I don't think our opinions of that, unless it's a blowout, are going to change much.
I think it's just because I've been talking up both the New South Wales teams so much these past few weeks, and going into the season in particular, we've got a lot of the Swans and Giants fans in our circle. I think just from a personal interest level, I think I've got this higher than you have.
I've got Carcall as number 3.
I've got that at 2 ahead of Showdown.
I've got Showdown at 2 because it's always my favorite of the out-of-state rivalries, and I just think, there isn't a huge desperation factor for Port, but there is for the Crows, and it's just interesting. Any outcome is interesting because the Crows swept them last year. But I have Q-Clash at number 1 because, again, the implications of this game are really important.
If you're going purely on-field, I'd probably have this at 2 or 3, but it's the crowd that brings it down for me.
I get that. I still, even if it's a bit of a disappointing GABA crowd, I don't know, there's something about GABA crowds that I like.
Well, we'll see what that bay of fans right by the...
I hope they do something. I hope, maybe they can dress up as the sun from the Teletubbies, or no, the Partick Thistle mascot.
They wouldn't be the Suns. They wouldn't be something similar when they play the Suns. Maybe they just go Teletubbies then?
Main character picks for this round? I guess we kind of need to do that.
Are you going with the GABA fans? That seems like your type of thing.
I'm going with...
Well, are you sticking on the oval?
Yeah, I think just after last week, it seems like the right choice. I need to go with something actually kind of sincere.
This is a rarity.
No, I do this like every second or third week I go sincere. So let's go with Matthew Kennedy. No, George Hewitt. I'm going George Hewitt.
Did you confuse the two of them for a second?
Nope, I was just thinking about it, and I tried to visualize it, and I visualized something involving George Hewitt, whether it's an interesting call or, I don't know, something involving George Hewitt.
I like Hewitt a lot. A pretty clean operator, out of the middle, able to bring and work through pressure right there off Cripps. Imagine just all the bodies there of Cripps, Hewitt, and Elijah Hollins there to win like the biggest midfield battles of the fourth quarter, trying to preserve a lead. That would be fun stuff there. I'm tempted to stay on the oval as well. And because you've talked up Q Clash so much, we've been thinking about it a lot, I'm gonna go with not one of the foremost pieces on either of these teams. No one that we've actually talked about as of late, but especially with who else the Lions are missing there with Zach Bailey out. If the Lions are gonna cook this game, it's because Lincoln McCarthy does something really big. So a hopeful main character pick here, Lincoln McCarthy.
Honorable mention Connor Rosie, because either he could get subbed out really early and it would look really dumb that he played, or he plays really well despite hurting his hamstring last week.
Or maybe the focus would just be on the Port Adelaide medical and training staff again, just like it was last year in Showdown. We'll find all that out pretty soon, all things considered. Find me on Twitter individually at BenjaminHK01.
Find me at Casual Media. Find Brian Harambe on Instagram at Cat Named Brian.
He is very happy because I spotted and Ethan fed him a spider earlier. Find us all on various platforms at Americans Footy.
And don't forget, like Gary the No Trash Cougar says, give a larbage, throw out your garbage.